Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Chelsea. If you like this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up or commenting below. If you want to see more of my videos, press the subscribe button and click on the bell for notifications. If you need any Stampin' Up! Products to make these cards, you can visit my online store and the link is in the description box below. When you purchase Stampin' Up! Products through me, you can earn free products. Check out my current customer appreciation products on my blog, and the link is listed below in the description. Today I'd like to share with you my Artisan Design Team Showcase Projects for December 2021. I was asked this month to create with the Inspired Thoughts stamp set and the coordinating Inspiring Canopy Dies. And the dies is where you get these really beautiful tree images from. And so I'm going to be showing you some fun things that you can do with the dies today. And then we'll be using the beautiful sentiments to just add that special touch to our cards. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the fun things about these cards is that they're kind of a 2-for-1 card, just slightly, which means that you do one thing and you can make 2 cards from it. And then they also have these really fun blended backgrounds. And so this one has a sky blended background, and then this one just has a fun framed blended background. And so I'm going to show you how to do that today. And we are using those inspired canopy dies to create these blended backgrounds. Then another fun thing that I've done on these cards is I have used our shimmery white cardstock. And I'm not sure if you can see, but there's just a little bit of a glow to the cardstock here. And I've used that for the card base and for my kind of the frame pieces here. And so let's go ahead and talk about that frame piece. So I've used shimmery white, and then I've gathered 2 rectangles from the stitched rectangle die set. It comes in lots of different sizes, and you just pick 2 and you're going to be creating a frame with them. So the largest one that I'm using is the 5 1/4 by 4 inch one, and then the smaller one I'm using creates about a 4 1/8 inch by 2 3/4 inch rectangle. And so I've just added those 2. I've done some measuring to make sure they're centered with one another, and I'm going to go ahead and run this through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And this is where you're going to get that 2-for-1 card here, because we're going to be using both pieces from this cut. Just want to be really careful while you're removing that washi tape, because it does get kind of pressed right into that cardstock when you run it through your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. Another thing is, because it has the stitching, you do also need to be careful as you're removing the cardstock from the die, because it's just really delicate right along that edge where the stitching is. So for our first card, we're going to be using this white border as our frame. And then for our second card, we will be using the inside piece as our background piece for our card. Okay, so next we're going to take some colors here, and you're going to want to use some colors that coordinate well. So I'll do the blues first. So the blues I'm using are Bermuda Bay. I also have Coastal Cabana, and then Pool Party. And what I like about these blues is they have just that little tint of green to just kind of make them nice and bright. So I have 2 each, and the sizes, these are 2 inches by 6 inches, and they're all that size, 2 of each of those colors. All right, so then for my second card, I just gathered some pink colors. I wanted this to have more of a springtime flowering tree feeling. And so the colors I'm using here are Flirty Flamingo. That's getting me that nice bright pink. I have Pale Papaya, which is a light orange kind of color. And then Petal Pink, which just kind of softens all those colors and brings them together. And so again, these are 2 inches by 6 inches. What I'm going to do with each one of these is I'm going to cut them in half using one of the dies from the Inspired Canopy Dies. And it's this curve right here. So there's really no science to this. You're just going to put it right in the center and cut each one of these strips into 2 pieces, and we're going to be using all 4 pieces of each color. So make sure to just keep all of them on hand. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so you can see that I've done that, and the die is just a little bit shorter than 6 inches, so you may have some that are still connected, and that's fine. You're just going to take a pair of paper snips and you'll just trim that so you get the 2 separate pieces. And I will just do that as I'm working with each color. So let's go ahead and begin with card number 1. So grab your blue papers and your frame. We'll go ahead and put card 2 off to the side. So you'll want to go ahead and you're starting with the colors at the bottom. And actually I needed to mention that I did do 1 sheet of Pear Pizzazz, and this is going to be kind of the ground for both of my cards. So I'm just going to put one off to the side and we'll use the other one. So you're going to flip your frame over and you're working from the back side, and the same with your little hills. Okay, each one of these needs to have the front down. So you're just really beginning with that ground piece, and then you just kind of get an idea of where you want to place it, and then you can trim it and add a little adhesive to the bottom on the front. Okay, and then that adhesive is just going to get placed at the bottom of the frame. Remember, we're working from the back, so it's going to look something like that. Do you kind of see how it's going to kind of work our way up to the top? So the next color I'm using is Bermuda Bay. And you're just going to start playing with this. You have 4 different pieces, and so it really can be any way you want. And maybe I'm thinking for adding these pieces, it actually might be easiest if we used some tear and tape instead of liquid adhesive. So go ahead and just add some tear and tape all the way down on the sides. And this is just going to hold your cardstock in place where you decide to lay it down. Remove all of that paper backing. And then when you do this, you just want to kind of change up how those shapes are laying on top of each other. So you don't want them always to be exactly the same. So let's get these other 2 ones, and then I'll show you from the front maybe what I mean when I say that. So you can see here that this shape is the same as that. So I don't want to layer it on so that they're exactly in the same place. So maybe shift it over, shift it up, okay, something like that. So you get a little different look every time. And let's do this one. Let's go ahead and move it a little closer to the edge. Okay. All right, so I just also noticed that if I'm going to get 3 colors of blue here, I can't do that very well if I've used up most of the space with my Bermuda Bay. So go ahead and just gently try to remove these pieces, and we're going to need to put them a little closer to one another. I was just getting a little too excited to create this card. Okay, so I think that one down there is fine. Let's go ahead and do another one that's just a little bit closer to those others. Okay, so you're kind of getting to see how that is all coming together. Then we'll of course trim off any excess. So our next color is the Coastal Cabana. Now if you wanted to kind of match some up before you add it, you could do that too. So you could easily be like, oh, I like that way that looks, and then add that to your card. Okay, let's move this one over just a little bit and place this one here. So we're just getting some really nice kind of like wind wavy kind of feeling. Let's move this one down a little bit so that it gets a little different shape right there. And then this one can kind of pop up right above it. Let's see how that looks. Yep, that's looking good. And then the very last one is the pool party. And this is our sky. And what we're going to do is a little different at the very top. So we'll add 3 just like we are doing right now. So 1, 2, and then we'll add our 3rd one, just so that it barely fits. And then this last one just covers everything else, okay? So you'll end up with something like that. Isn't that just so pretty? I just love that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to keep them all together with a little adhesive running right up the center. And that's going to hold them all down. And I don't necessarily need to remove this if I don't want to. And then I'm going to take my paper snips and I'm just cutting right down that edge. It's a little tight down there. You just want to make sure you don't accidentally cut your frame. Let's just do a little tearing. So we just want to make sure that we're not showing that it doesn't tear or cut. So we see it, right? So this frame is kind of covering everything. Okay, that's a little bit easier than trying to cut all those thick pieces right there. I probably used my paper trimmer or something, but... Okay, so look, it looks so nice and clean from the front. And let's go ahead and do the same to the side here. So such a beautiful background for our card. So I'm just going to go ahead and place that off to the side, and let's make card number 2. This one uses the same technique, but just a little different because we are going to be creating a background with it instead of filling in kind of like a hole with it. So what I need is a piece of just some really thin copy paper. And we're going to be creating our layering with this. We are also going to be starting from the top and moving down. So for the top piece, we need to add this just like we did the top piece before, and that's just going to go right to the top of our cardstock or our paper, our copy paper. Okay, so just right there at the top. And then we're just going to be adhering all of our other papers moving down. We do want to try and keep things so that it's about 1/3, so 1/3 of each color on our paper. This time we're just going to use just regular adhesive to adhere everything to our card. So let's do the first one right about there. So I'm starting with Petal Pink. And you can, of course, change the way it sits on the card. So again, this is the exact same piece, and I'm just going to move it over a little bit and get a different look to it because we are going to be trimming it down to the card base size. And my copy paper is actually 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so I can kind of see how it's all going to look on that size of card base. So my next color is the Pale Papaya. And then we're going to move to the Flirty Flamingo. So you'll get something like that. Now it's really important that those colors are all going to work within your cut. So you can see here that I'm using again that large 5 1/4 by 4 inch die cut piece. And it looks like I may need to just bring maybe these down just a little bit here. So I'm just gonna gently lift this one up and just apply it just a little lower than I had it, just so that I have a little extra room to make sure that I'm cutting the colored cardstock. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut this out with our Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. However, there's so many layers that you're not going to get a clean cut on the ends. What we're looking for is that fun stitching so that it coordinates with the inside piece here. So if it doesn't cut all the way through, that's okay. It is going to be tight as you run it through your embossing machine. So just keep that in mind as well. So let's go ahead and cut this, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the next steps. You can see how that just really cuts through those couple of those layers, but doesn't cut through all of them. So just go ahead and carefully remove what it can, and then pop out this inside part here, just like that. Okay, so you get this really fun stitching right along the outside edge. So what you'll do instead is, I'm going to use my paper trimmer, I think, instead of scissors for this. So what you'll want to do is line up your guide right in that center line, right where the cut line is, okay? And then if you feel too much resistance, then don't cut, because that means you're actually cutting your cardstock where it wasn't pre-cut. So it's kind of like, it's like scored in a way, and so it should be pretty easy to just cut off that little excess right there. So again, right in the center, and then you kind of just gently fill where that blade is. There we go. Okay, if you have any little pieces that maybe we're still showing, or you need to just kind of clean it up a little bit, you can do that on those ends. Okay, so now we have this really fun piece that we can add to the background of card number 2. Okay, so our next step is to actually cut and color our die cut pieces. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through really quickly what I'm going to do. So I've already done a lot of prep work, so that because it does take a little bit of time to get some of these pieces colored. So I don't have enough of my spring tree over here, and so I'm just going to show you what I did. I've got a piece of basic white cardstock, and I also have some adhesive sheets. I liked using the adhesive sheets for these die cut pieces because they're pretty delicate, and then I don't have a mess with like liquid adhesive or something. So go ahead and you're applying this to the back of your cardstock. And then from the front, you're going to actually cut out a bunch of these tree canopy dies. There are 4 different dies that you can use. And I just think it's best to cut as many as you can, and then it's easier to layer and achieve the look that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all 4 from this piece of cardstock. I did add the adhesive sheet just to the center, and so this larger one may not have adhesive on the whole thing, but that's okay. So I would do the same thing with the tree trunks itself as well. And then for the green, I did cut some of these from different colors. I did a soft sea foam cardstock color just to make it a little darker, as well as this one was done with garden green cardstock. And so you're going to be able to get some different shadows in your tree by using lighter and darker cardstocks as your base. For my springtime, I kind of just want everything to be white so that I can kind of get that look of maybe some white blossoms. And so that's why I'm using basic white for all of my canopy. So I'm going to run this through and I'll be right back. Okay, and then I did need to mention that I cut the tree trunks from Crumb Cake cardstock. So you'll just go ahead and remove the pieces. And if they're stuck inside, you just need to find something a little pokey to kind of poke out and help it remove from that die. Sometimes the little extra adhesive makes it stick a little bit more than usual. Okay, so I'm going to grab just some scratch paper here, just to kind of protect my grid paper. I like to kind of try to use these as much as possible. So if I was doing my summer tree with a little bit of green in the tree instead of my springtime tree, I would be doing the exact same thing that I'm going to do, but with green colors. So let me just show you what green colors I used. So for the green, I've used the Granny Apple combo. So that's both Granny Apple light and dark. And I've also used the light and dark Mossy Meadow. And then for my springtime tree, I'm actually using some different ones here. I've got the Petal Pink Blend Markers. Let's see, where are those ones? So there's the light and the dark of my Petal Pink. And that one's mostly to just blend everything together. And then these two are my flower colors. So I've got Pale Papaya, which coordinates with my cardstock, and then I also have Flirty Flamingo. Now, I did think I mentioned that the color of cardstock that I used to get the light and dark shades for my tree, but I think this one I said was Garden Green, but because of the Stampin' Blends, I think it is Granny Apple Green cardstock here. And so that's the one that gives me that little darker shadow color. Let's go ahead and start creating with our springtime tree. And if you're going to be making the green one, then just do the exact same thing, but with the green markers, okay? So I'm going to start with the Pale Papaya, and I think I'm gonna just start with the dark color. And this one, I'm just really what you're doing is just kind of trying to create little splotches of color. And so I kind of liked to just come around and do a little swirl around the edges and some of those die cut pieces. So I'll kind of give you a close-up. So you can see how right wherever there's a cut, I've added a little bit of color. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that same to all my pieces here. I could also get some along the outside edge as well. So then I'm going to add the dark Flirty Flamingo. This, I'm just going to do the exact same thing, just some color kind of splotched in and around the Pale Papaya. I'm kind of adding these more as dots instead of little curves. Let me give you a close-up. And then you're going to take your Petal Pink, and you can do the dark or the light here, and you're just going to blend it all together. Now, if you are doing the greens, there isn't a light green that you can blend all of this with. And so you're kind of blending with the light Granny Apple Green. That's your blending one. And so you're gonna want to use your Mossy Meadow quite a bit for your light and dark there. Okay, so I'm actually going to try to get those Flirty Flamingos to blend just a little bit more because I did use the darker ones on this. I think I'm going to pull in a little bit of my light Flirty Flamingo, try to get those Flirty Flamingo darks to kind of blend out a little bit. They're feeling a little darker than I want. Get a different, pull in my darker Petal Pink just to add a little more color here. And then get that lighter Flirty Flamingo just to kind of lighten up that just a little bit, maybe add a little more depth to what you're creating is just some little areas for pockets of color to kind of come through. You just keep working it until you like it. You do want to kind of blend it. Make sure you're blending. You can leave little pockets of white as well if you want for highlights. Okay. All right, so let me give you a close-up. Some are darker than others, and that's okay. We want there to be some variation in those colors. Okay, so then I've got my lights and my darks. And then for the crumb cake, for our trunks, I have done the blend in crumb cake as well, and it just gives a little bit of shadow. So just kind of highlight where you want those shadows to go. Okay, and each trunk, they're exactly the same. So now we can start to put our cards together. Let's begin with our card number 1, which is our framed summer card. So you're going to want to get your frame as well as a card base. And again, I used card bases of the shimmery white cardstock. That's just a nice thick cardstock that is perfect for something like this. Now you could add more adhesive here and then this can just stick right to your card. I think that's probably what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to use some liquid adhesive. It's just a nice strong adhesive. Things won't go anywhere. Place that right in the center of your card base. If you need to open this and smooth it out, you can. You'll get something like that. So I should probably mention how I got the individual trees, because the die is a grouping of 4 trees. So for this card, and for my other card, what I did is I just focused on cutting out this one tree here, and then I just trimmed it out and just kind of tried to find a nice round edging, and then I'll go in and kind of just cover up a little bit with the leaves so that you don't see kind of that rough edge on that side. Now I did notice that on this card I included a little bit of the ground at the bottom. I must have, when I was prepping, I just must have already cut those out and didn't think about that step at all. So if by chance you do want to have that ground in there, then you would probably need to add that piece first when creating your background. For this card, I'm just going to kind of tuck in the tree into the bottom of my frame here, and I think that's going to be just fine. It'll give me the look that I'm looking for. So these also have adhesive sheets on the back, which just makes it really nice to be able to just add it like a sticker. When I have something that's really delicate, I use adhesive sheets. It's also pretty easy to remove all those little extra pieces because the adhesive sheet kind of holds them in place, and you can just pull off the piece that you want to keep. So here I'm just going to lift up that frame just a little bit so I can tuck in my tree. Okay, so when you're adding your tree, just make sure it goes on nice and straight, that trunk, because it can get a little crooked pretty easily. So something like that. And then we're just going to add our leaves now. So again, just kind of lift those up. I'm starting with one of the darker ones. This one was done with the Granny Apple Green cardstock, and that's just going to go Actually, I think I want to rotate that. So there, like that. Okay. Then I'm going to add, let's add something with a little bit of highlight. Not quite as dark. So I'm just going to go ahead and place that right onto my card. Then I've got one that has a lot more highlight to it. I don't like that one as much. I think I'll go with this one. And then maybe add one more dark one. Maybe I'll add that one first and then add the top. So it's really fun to kind of play around with these little pieces. There's no right or wrong. They don't have a specific place they should be. So it kind of depends on how you want your tree to look. So I'm just going to kind of add a little more dark right there and then place this one on top like that. So there is my beautiful tree with lots of fun layers. And you can see my first tree and how the shapes are totally different. So just have fun with it and have some, get some fun different shapes and different looks to your trees. Now over here, you do want to have some of those leaves kind of come out of your frame. I think that just adds a fun little touch to your card. So then moving on to card number 2. So for this one, we're going to add a little bit of green at the bottom, and this can be any shape. I kind of like the way this end piece looks. So I'm going to add a little adhesive and just place it right along the bottom of this rectangle. Now you'll notice that I want to have a nice seamless stitching, and right now you don't see the stitching. So to fix that, we're going to add a little bit of the stitching with our stitched rectangle die. So all you need to do is just put this back into that die. And so just, it doesn't need to be perfect, just kind of eyeball where it used to go. So something like that. Okay. And then the same down here, just kind of get an eyeball for where it should go. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be in that general area so that you don't get you don't cut off any of that. So then you're going to take your clear plates and you're just going to do a partial cut here. So you don't need to cut the whole thing again. You're just going to put this on your base plate, and then you're going to take your top plate and only cover up the area that you do want to cut. And then you can run this through your machine just like this. Okay, so when you lift this up, you'll have that nice stitching that goes all the way around your card. Okay, so it's going to look like that. And then we can add our tree to the center. And before we do that, I do want to add a little bit of shadow down here at the bottom. And so to do that, I'm going to use my dark Granny Apple Green and just add about a little bit of shadow there. And then I'll take my light Granny Apple Green and blend that out just a little bit. Just to create a fun little shadow at the bottom. I might make it just a little bigger. There we go. And that will dry and not be quite as dark. So then we can add our tree. Just remove the paper backing from the adhesive sheet. So we'll put that right about there in the center. Make sure that trunk is nice and straight again. And then we're going to use the flowers on our trees to add this springtime look. So this one, I'm going to see if I can find one that's a little more straight for the bottom. I kind of like the shape of this one. I'm going to see if we can kind of repeat that one. So I'm going to go with this small one here. This one's going to go at the bottom. Then you can see some different ideas on how to create your shapes on your trees. Then we're going to do, I think this one maybe. Maybe let's do this one. This one's another dark one. So this shape over on this side, bring it down just a little bit. And then we kind of have our curved one over here. Bring that down too. Maybe up just a little bit. Okay, so we're kind of decorating from the bottom up. Then we're going to do maybe a big canopy up at the top. I think I might add this little one in the middle just to kind of fill in some space. Kind of like that. Okay, so then we're just going to add this to our card with a little adhesive. You know, probably liquid adhesive would be a good idea again on this one because of all the different textures from all that paper that we did. So go ahead and find the center of that. You can just eyeball it. Press on the back, and then you're going to add this to another card base. And again, this is shimmery white cardstock that I'm using. So then this is all done. Okay, so now we can go ahead and add our greeting to our cards. And I have already stamped the ones I wanted to use. I've got "You make a difference every day" and "Thank you so much." And so I'm going to add both of these with dimensionals. All right, so for this summer card, I'm just placing the greeting down in the corner. And I did cut them out with some coordinating stitched rectangle dies as well. And then the "Thank you so much" can go right across the card, about 1/3 of the way up or so, just like that. Then I do want to add just a little bit of bling to my cards, just to make them feel a little bit on that special side. And so I'm going to use my Take a Pick tool and some Artistry Blend sequins. And I love these because they come in a bunch of colors and they also have that iridescent look. So they're complementary to lots of different cards and colors. So I'm going to put 3 up at the top and 2 down at the bottom. Whoops. Flying sequins. So there's my summer card. And then for my spring card, I'm going to use the kind of more orangey colors to go along with the color scheme of this card. And kind of the same thing, a large one and 2 small ones in the top corner, and then a small and a large in the bottom. Just like that. And my cards are all done. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching me create these beautiful cards today. If you're interested in getting written instructions or seeing close-up images of these cards, you can visit my blog, creativechelsea.com. If you need to purchase any Stampin' Up! Products to make these cards, you can visit my online store, and the link is in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching. Have a creative day. Bye!